All right, Doom. Go to any good events lately? Any
Yeah,
good conferences coming up? It gets help you hit your quota.
no, we're good.
Okay. So for the we just spent like 5 minutes talking about our Doom has some strong feelings on events and their value. It's not high.
Yes, that will be a whole. We can bring up like marketing expert too, so we can do a panel and a heated debate.
Yeah, and you could just tell them they're wrong. Like bullshit. Prove it.
No, we can bring metrics, the anecdotes, and you know,
Oh, yeah. Fair
met,
enough. All right, let's move on to the next top story. Which government's going to backstop the AI bubble? Let's.
yeah, that's a little interesting. So early in the game, but at least they're being transparent and upfront.
Yeah, I haven't read or listened, but like I listened to podcasts that have covered it. That was a snippet. She did not say that, but she said it would be cheaper to get financing from the government. And Josh Brown's comment was, "No shit. How about a grant?
Yeah.
Just some free money." And so I was dying on that. But so our top story for this week is related to generative AI, a little bit of OpenAI, and that is Menlo's State of the Market. So their mid-year LM market update. Let's throw this up here because I can. So the 2025 mid-year LLM market update, foundation model landscape and economics. And so I'm going to scroll down. So one of, 2023, just to give some scale, this is insane. $500 million, 500 million was their enterprise spend on these models, right? Not surprising. It grows to 2024, which is phenomenal growth, right? In 1 year, way above any other IT CAGR, compound annual growth rate of any sector, right? But still, we know enterprises are slow. Now, mid-year, they're already at 8.4, so they're close to tripling their 2024 spend by end of 2025. So that's pretty ridiculous. I'm curious what percentage of OpenAI, Anthropic, and everybody's models of this is enterprise versus consumer, because like if everybody's freaking out about like, so if you took the revenue of OpenAI, it's like what they're estimating, like what, 20 billion, 15, 20 billion this year. Anthropic's like maybe half that. Like, but enterprises are forecasted to spend, I think, like 13 billion is what they said in the article. So it's like, all right, it's interesting. I mean, what do you take away from these numbers in this 24-month snapshot? Well, I guess this is 36. So
Yeah. I mean, we constantly hear that like, oh, it's bubble. Sometimes when I see these charts and we talk about this frequently and we see these and then you have the other, there's a other side of the stadium saying there's a bubble. And then everybody references like the .com, like, oh, it was a
do
bubble. But at
we
the end of the
not
day,
have a better fucking analogy? Like, I'm so tired of hearing that. That's the only analogy. That and then the what 2020 1929 crash. Is that those are the two?
which is completely fine. Like, I think that using the .com actually, people should probably still use it, but I think what the reframing of it is like .coms didn't necessarily like, yes, a lot of died. There was like a lot of irrational, let's call it exuberance, Alan Greenspan called it as well. But when we look at it, like technology did advance, Amazon, we could say rose from the ashes, whatever you want to call it. Yes, the web bands didn't work. The cosmos.com didn't work. But if you fast forward like 15 years later, Webvan exists in the form of like Amazon delivery for food, Cosmo.com. It exists in the world of being the new DoorDash. So all the things that, yes, maybe potentially did implode or didn't work in that, like that segment of the chasm exists now. And it's all heavily influenced how we operate in our daily lives. So yes, there may be a bubble where I sometimes take a step back because I'm like, I'm seeing these charts and yes, even if it is a bubble, what have you rather been the person saying, oh, it's a bubble, I don't want to touch any of that, not mess with it. If you're in your career stage or wherever you are and saying, I'm going to stay in telecom. I'm going to work at
Okay.
Cisco
Okay.
versus like, I'm going to go and work in like maybe just an Amazon. my analogy now is like, yeah, it's probably best to take the bet, even if you'd get wrecked in the interim bubble, but at least you're in AI, because if you would have like stayed at like the, let's call it the Googles of the world, even though Google came after the bubble, but if you just got in at Amazon, even in like 2000,
Pets.com.
well, pets is a bad example, but then pets, there's many maturations of like what that became. Where I'm going is like just getting into technology and let's call it Web 2, even in 2002 after the bubble, you probably have had a successful life of working in
Yeah,
Web 2, like .coms.
totally. I think that makes sense. I think yeah, if we separate the bucket of employee and your career in the industry versus an investor, because like a lot of investors just lost everything. But yeah, hey, we're in America, so capitalism is awesome, bankruptcy, blah de da. But to your point, so and I don't know how many people were getting RSUs back then, but if you just to your point stayed at Cisco, like you did well, right? Because then you just got a bunch of RSUs on the climb back up. Maybe yeah, the ones you got initially are worthless, but if you stuck around, you're going to get more, and then you're going to appreciate. So yeah, it's so much of life is timing. I think the other difference from what I can tell here is just like you got companies hitting $100 million in revenue and cash flow. I mean, they're quote unquote positive or positive margin, like lovable in less than a year. I mean, you got people are paying for this stuff. I guess it's like these are real dollars. Not just like your PEs are not 100, 1,000, right? Like they're reasonable, I guess, based on some like real spending. So yeah, I would agree. Even, and I guess lastly, my point would be you got to disconnect the real world from the stock market bubble. So like, even if, everything drops 30, 40, 50% tomorrow, Amazon's still shipping you groceries, right? You're still going to AI mode on Google. You're still doom scrolling on fucking Facebook. Like, so, you just wiped out a bunch of on paper, and they have actual hard assets that they can leverage and pivot to do whatever else they want, right? So Amazon, notoriously overbuilt during the pandemic of all their infrastructure for like fulfilled by and or whatever, whatever else that incorporated before. Was it like Dave Clark went to run that freight forwarder? I forget. You remember his name?
Yeah, I
Anyways,
don't.
so like now, you know, Amazon took it on the chin, publicly on a couple of earnings quarters, and they're doubling down and like they're serving more and more rural markets. We got same day, we got overnight, we got groceries. Like it's so yeah, I agree. I'm not saying it won't go down, but it's better to be in the boat than swimming alongside it. So I agree with you on that. So that being said, let's rank the winners.
Yeah.
All right. I guess so this same chart or same report, the market, what's been crazy to me is in enterprise again, y'all, enterprise, because I think OpenAI just said they passed 1 million like daily active users, which is insane. The enterprise LLM market for API calls, so just think B2B business. They used to have 50% of the market, first mover advantage. Really, they're the only ones out there. Anthropic had 12% in 2023. That's almost inverted. So it's like OpenAI is now 25%, and then Anthropic's 32%, which is surprising. I'm actually really surprised by the Google, because I think our graph last year, if you look at quote unquote the like companies using, from I think it was the ramp AI chart, like, it was basically nothing from like Gronk or Grok and Google on the B2C prosumer side. But this is like, all right, Google's making some hay out there, man. So and then over here is the coding market share. So Anthropic's got 42%, followed by OpenAI's 21%, Google 16, Meta 10%, which is interesting, and then others 11%. And so coding is, as you know, is kind of the first real like gangbuster AI agent new market use case that like people are spending real money on. So it's kind of driving all this consumption.
I'm surprised. I didn't know Anthropic had that big of a market share.
I've heard a lot about it. Just people love Claude Code, use Claude Code. Oh, you're not a coder, still use it in your CLI. And it's kind of the topic we're going to talk a little bit later on cognition and some points of view on synchronous versus asynchronous. But yeah, this is the first time I've seen stats on it. I think I want I think Anthropic said they've reached like a 500 million ARR run rate just on Claude Code. Yeah. For those of you can't see, Doom's jaw just hit the ground or his desk, so he can't respond. He's picking his tongue up, rolling it back in.
How many events were they at? How many booths did they have?
All of them. They're at every fucking booth, and they crushed it. The Doom. You
Well,
couldn't get out of the conference hall without fucking touching a keyboard and playing with Claude Go.
right. All their reps were MPDs were at every single event
Yeah,
across the world.
and they still a lot of stalking. So
Yeah. No, I digress.
yeah. All right, man. So the there's some other interesting some data points on like open versus closed, and basically everyone's using closed models now. They're not doing that many self-hosted. What I thought was interesting is people are paying the premium for the frontier model. So if you've ever gone to, Anthropic's website or OpenAI's website or Amazon's website, Gemini's, like you just see this massive like compression on price per token for these smaller models or even older generation. So, it's just like if you were to go use ChatGPT 4 today versus 5, it's going to be significantly cheaper than ChatGPT 4 was when it launched, right? And so, but what you see here that's interesting on the adoption curve is it's more important to be on the frontier of the latest models and their features because you're going to get your ROI or your use cases into production and see results faster than it is to try to do it at 20% of the cost with a dumber but much more cost effective model, which is interesting because it makes it really interesting for a cost competitive like compete situation, that I get to deal with all the time. So it's I don't have like that's kind of blew me away. Like just like they're like, nah, it's good enough, and or no, we're gonna stick with it. We're not gonna migrate. We're not gonna move. It works. So I don't know. What do you got any thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I would, while, while you were walking through that, I was thinking about like, maybe this is a horrible analogy, but if you think about like upgrading Windows or upgrading to the newest EC2, I wonder what the future looks like where, maybe the models aren't coming out as rapidly as they are now, but will it be like the world of where, you're trying to sell, hey, upgrade to the newest EC2, or you need to do the new Windows upgrade, but teams are like, no, Windows works fine for us. Like, we don't need the Windows upgrade, or we don't need the new EC2. Yeah, I wonder if there's a world where that like, and maybe that's a horrible analogy, but you know what I'm saying? Like where people will just sit in old models.
Yeah, it's a great question. So my off the cuff thoughts, right? So it kind of just goes to friction of migrations, as you well know. And so Microsoft is notoriously like painful and like just don't touch it so it'll work. And then the licensing implications and all of that jazz. So what we're seeing develop, if you just think about LLMs as the engine and all of the ecosystem like LangChain, LangGraph, LangSmith, LangFuse, Amazon Strands, Agent Kit from OpenAI, whatever it is, there's a whole orchestration around that. And so you're kind of getting locked into those tool providers. And so those tool providers can do one of two things. They can kind of be open and make it easier to switch out your models, which is kind of what, this is off the, I'm speaking for myself. This is my own perspective on Amazon Bedrock Agent Core. So they have 7 different primitives: Agent Core runtime, identity, gateway, tool access, browser, things like that. And it essentially takes the undifferentiated heavy lifting. You can bring in whatever orchestration of choice. So if you wanted to use Strands or if you wanted to use LangGraph and run it there, you can bring in your observability, LangFuse, and evals, or you could use more native services. But like you don't have to spin up your cluster and manage all the open source tools and all that kind of stuff. So you get to help move faster. So that's what I would say is fairly open. And so you can kind of like maybe swap in models in and out and it still kind of works. But if you really like built around something, then it's hard because you just don't know, it's not deterministic and you don't know what, if it's, is it worth like all the rework to save, 10 cents on the token? And especially with the rate that everything's going down and how fast things are coming out, it's just like, let's give it 6 months, see what happens. That's my take.
Yeah, yeah. So they'll have AI savings plans and AI RIs.
You don't even need it, bro. Like just like fucking take a nap, and when you wake up, the cost will be cheaper per token. It's crazy.
Yeah. But no. Yeah, interesting times. It's very enjoyable to watch this.
Yeah, this is a good report. So just kind of it's nice to see the data validation of the anecdotes that we've been seeing in the field. So all right, what's next up? All right, so I just came across this guy. I think his name is like Swix, is Sean Wang. But this dude, he was on the AI Daily Brief podcast, and he's been in this world for a while now, kind of like building stuff and just like he organizes conferences. And so he was so as the first real use cases, AI coding, he's got some really deep perspectives on like who's going to capture value, what's moving quickly, what's not working. So I'm just going to throw up this MBA chart so I look smart. Got the 4 quadrants. It's like, ooh. All right. So his point of view on this, right? So we have on the x-axis is timeline. It's like short or long. So can we implement this in a short amount of time or build it, or is it going to take us longer, right? What's the time horizon? And then the other y-axis is economic value. So where would you focus? Something that is really high value economically, and you can implement quickly or build quickly, that's a slam dunk. That's like, yes, more, I'll take two, right? If it's low economic value and it's going to take a long time, right? You don't want to spend any money there. And so high, long, that's an interesting, or should I go with like low value but really quickly to implement? That's the so he's putting code in the high value and short implementation. And I think we're seeing that. That's not rocket science. But some of his perspectives on this were he's actually so there's a bifurcation, or I should say a spectrum of quote unquote asynchronous tasks in AI coding versus synchronous. And synchronous is more I do it now, like you talk to the age, like generates code, you accept, go build this for me, I'll wait. So it's a little bit of like it's hard to get into flow. Versus asynchronous is like, hey, go off and do this while you're coding and come back and check in. The analogy that Gemini gave me was like, oh, it's kind of like an email. You shoot it off, and then when somebody replies, that's when you'll respond. And so I guess that would be like, hey, I'm working on this app that's going to run on AWS, you know, build out all the IAM policies, da 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 da. Here's kind of the standard requirements from our organization. Tell me when you're done so I can review it. And then you go back to kind of like focusing on like what you're doing and developing the architecture and the engineering stuff. And so he's saying asynchronous is actually improving faster than synchronous right now. And that's actually where a majority of the value is. Because then with synchronous, you'll be able to use your brain instead of outsourcing it and then checking Twitter all day. And then the asynchronous will be truly doing the kind of undifferentiated heavy lifting for you. Not that it's not valuable, but it's just not fun and it's exhausting. Maybe, it's like digging a ditch. It's like, so that was a long soapbox on there, but I found this pretty fascinating just in his whole blog that he shared. We'll put it in the comments below. But I don't know, man. Anything resonate with you?
I didn't want to say it because I'll be like, damn, why'd you latch onto that? You said that
Do it.
he coordinates conferences.
So you immediately don't trust him.
Explain. But no, you know what I'm saying? Like that is the ultimate sales, like that he's selling and he's getting people to come to his conferences. No, but it's good. I mean, I think a lot of the matrix I do agree with. You had flight booking as high lift, but low impact.
Yeah, long time to implement, but low impact.
Wait, so I don't know. I don't know though if it would be. I guess I'm not engineering, but I don't think it would be that. And we could debate this, but long time to implement. Seems like something relatively that's already done with APIs via like the orbits and everything that exists as like the aggregation layer. And like if you just fed the same API aggregations into like a model.
Yeah, but like I guess the way I read it is like, so are you gonna let it book your tickets for your Europe trip or Disneyland?
Yeah, I guess to your point, it depends on how you're using it. I guess I'm thinking more from like the consumer side where I could go like, hey, planning to go to Disneyland. I'd like to go in October, the first week. We'd like to stay at the Disneyland Resort, flying out of Hawaii, preferably fly nonstop afternoon flights and return Friday, anytime flights, blah, blah, blah. And then it could like sort of pull on all the hotels, like flights and be like, here's something that would work in an ideal for you. But it actually going through and booking them, that's the autonomous layer.
Yeah, I think, and this is a blog, so it's a massive report. So I'm hypothesizing, and maybe you could totally be right. I think the metric that between AI and an agent or agentic is the agency. Like, how high agency is it? So can it complete it on its own? And I just don't think people are maybe ready in that example. So, but kind of another interesting point in that same blog, so I highly recommend y'all check it out, was model labs like versus agent labs. And so he's like, what's interesting is OpenAI has like two products, maybe three. They've got ChatGPT and they have Sora, Codex. So like, it's kind of interesting. So they could do all this cool stuff. They've disrupted a bunch of industries, but they don't have a ton of products. And then he's, whereas you had other people. So the whole thing that he said was agents, like model providers, build models first, and then they look for the application, versus like the agents like find the application, build it, and then work backwards towards the model, which I thought was kind of interesting. So there's some examples being like the most interesting one to me was, or kind of easiest to understand, is Anthropic makes Claude, Sonnet, Opus models. Their agentic offering is Claude Code. And so they have a little bit of both. Another example would be Gemini Labs, but then Lovable, for example, maybe all the agents in there. So it's kind of interesting because the example he gave, I'll just throw it up here. I think this is more of a shout out to his current company. Was if you just look at the AI coding companion, whoa, enterprises can't just adopt OpenAI, ChatGPT, or like we're going to copy paste our code in here and then copy it over. Like they need other features, governance, security, like tooling, and so like that's where the agent comes in because it's actually building more specific. And so it was this kind of interesting. So it's like, I guess my takeaway here is like, if you can't get a job at a lab, go find an agent company that's like building these applications. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Two was, he's like, the model companies shit on the app builders. So like if you want big bucks, like they pay their researchers more than like a front end, back end, cloud infrastructure engineer, ML ops, or any of that. It's like, that's nice, but like we're gonna pay our PhD students $10 million this year. So it's like an interesting culture, which I'd never really thought about. So it's like, builders versus like researchers. And so that was another trip. So that my head was spinning. I think I read the blog twice, and it took me a couple of days to process it. So I was just like, "Damn, dude, that's some insightful stuff." So I wanted to bring it here and share it. I don't know if any of that resonates with you, or if you disagree. You're like, hard pass, Quinn, hard pass.
No, no, no. I like the analogy of like the labs are paying the PhDs and the apps are hiring, I guess you would call them engineers and sellers. And but that is, and to your point, like, where do you want to work? Like, where would it be easier for you and I to get in? Probably at the app layer.
Yeah, there's going to be way more just agents and apps. I think that's for me. It gets kind of hard to understand what's going to be profitable. That's a risk going to any startup, but everyone's slapping AI on there, and it's like, do you have product market fit? Can you get escape velocity past 100 million? Like,
yeah, and that's the other tough thing. Not to go on a tangent, but like, yes, if you're saying, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to work in AI, and to your point, like everything I see now has AI slapped on it, right? So
right? So
everything
it's
is it.
meaningless.
Yeah, and so like, let's say you go to work for that startup, maybe it is or isn't like true AI, and then they go under, like probably not going to have the credentials to get on it like an open AI. You know what I'm saying? Like where I go with, if you're just at some like random real estate company that threw AI on it, like you're not going to be like
Yeah.
looked at as like the caliber.
So maybe it's a good pivot to our next topic on kind of unemployment. There's a great report on this, which has some nuggets. I mean, it kind of states what we know. Job market's hard right now, but job postings kind of the job market seemed to bottom in 2025, and then there seems to be light at the tunnel for the younger engineers. People are going to like double down. I think so. I personally believe a lot of the layoffs have been less about AI and more about just overhiring or bloat. But so sorry, I just lost my train of thought a little bit. But the one of the stats there to try to link it was when you were saying, they wouldn't be able to get a job at the big firms. So they are poo-pooing self-taught AI engineering. So if you don't have hands-on and keyboard experience, at least at like a Lovable or an AI startup that went out of business, like they're not just hiring you and you're going to train you. Cause I think honestly, they don't have the expertise themselves. So they're actually like trying to just poach. To your point, I think even if you went and worked for a startup, but you build it out on Amazon, or another cloud, then like you would at least have some pedigree. They could go work for, I know I always throw out JP Morgan, but like a Fortune 2000 company, and they would still pay you a premium. Like it wouldn't be a research lab premium, but it would still be a pretty sizable premium because there's still such a dearth of experience around these things. So I don't know. That was one of the insights that I pulled out of this report. And yeah, so I agree with you, man.
The you know job openings, recent like layoffs. I had sent another buddy, we saw the purple badge that got laid off at Amazon. And for those of you that don't know, purple badge is basically like seeing a unicorn on campus. So somebody who's essentially been there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Racist person was there 20 years. But when I had sent this to my other buddy, he said, I'm starting to see some signals. And then he did a quick Gemini thing. And he's like, have you noticed that pretty much everybody we're seeing on LinkedIn or whatnot is in an older demographic, and they've been there and had some tenure. And his Gemini prompt was on, does it cost companies more health insurance wise, to maintain older employees? And I know this falls into ageism and stuff, but at larger companies, it's actually costs them more to have employees that are over the age of say 40. Whereas like if you're at a smaller scale company, insurance companies do age banding, where it's like a band. So it's like, okay, we take your lowest and your highest, and we sort of like average that. And so like you're getting this like middle range. But at larger scale companies, they literally will just price it based on the actual age of the employees. And so if you have a demographic that skews to later, because people over, let's say 40 tend to maybe go to the hospital more, but go to the doctor more. There's more just, medical type items. And so he's like, it's potentially the hidden ageism, where it's just costing these companies more. But to your point too, that could be coupled into they just hired too much.
I think there's that for sure because it does. That's why I was a little surprised on because my nephew's down. He's in I think Brazil working at a startup. And he's done it for a year. He's been grinding super hard, super smart. He's got some buddies that are a couple years out, or sorry, just graduated, so he's a couple years ahead of them. And they got legit comp sci degrees. Cannot find a job to save their lives. Like just like having to Uber or work at Starbucks or Chipotle or janitor. Like, and I'm just like, I just like it's like really like it's not that advanced yet. And I guess and I'm not saying that it won't be. I think my hypothesis here is one, there's just a shit ton of uncertainty. People didn't know how fast AI was going to improve, how fast it was going to help with coding, the tariffs. And so just when you're uncertain, you can't make decisions. So they weren't hiring people and they were just keeping it. We'll just play the wait and see game. But like long term, to your point, younger employees not distracted by kids, don't have a ton of health care issues, right? Aren't taking a ton of paid leave and can just work. That's all they do, right? And you have to train them up a little bit. But like we're still gonna need brains to like think through this stuff. So and that's what the stat in the job was saying, hey, there's a bounce back on, companies are seem to be opening up and hiring new grads, which I think is great because like we gotta do this. But yeah, I mean, I got three kids, man. Like it's a lot, and insurance is not cheap. And like I know my insurance just went up $80 a month for next year. And like, I'm pretty sure the employee side is going to do the same, if not more. Like it's every, like, they're not like shifting it to me. It's just up and to the right is the insurance game. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. Which it's unfortunate because yeah, and again, it could be ageism, could not be ageism, but it could be that like, hey, these older 40+ year olds cost us more money and they have 3 kids that we all pay for these, family insurance, dental, all that ranks up. And to your point, like we could hire 2 more junior engineers for the cost of 1 senior.
Seriously, and the speed that this is, like, the neuroplasticity of someone young is going to be a real big advantage in how fast this is changing, in my opinion. So, real quick, I'm just going to ruin doomsday. So, percentage of jobs that were open to remote applicants in 2022 was 56. Now it's down to 35%. Number of applicants per remote friendly job listing, it was 1 to 1 in 2022. Do you remember that? That was insane. Now, and this seems low to me. Only 4.5 applicants per job listing. I feel like you hear just stories of like one post or one app job getting hundreds. I guess this is an average, but at least you live in Hawaii, man. So there's that. It's beautiful.
Yes, it can't. I don't want to. Can't lose my job.
Yeah, you're gonna be, I don't know, cutting pineapples or something.
Like fishing for a living.
That's not a bad gig. I don't even like the
Yeah,
fish, but it's definitely less
yeah.
stressful than what we do. And the check. So here's some of these job types. So we got the change from 2024 to 2025. So front end engineer went down 10% versus machine learning engineer went up 40%. And so what's interesting here, again, these are percentages, not actually, like, I don't know how many front end engineers there are, but I can tell you there are more front end engineers than machine learning engineers. So it's hard to say if this is a net gain, but like the percentage increases show a net gain, but we don't know the actual numbers they started off of. So I wonder if this is kind of a wash and they're just re-swizzling. But the front end's interesting. It's like, I wonder why. Is that because all the design tools are that much easier to create? Or is it because, like, oh, we're building for agents to interact, not humans with eyeballs? But yeah, so I guess the key here is deal with data and then try to become a machine learning expert. I feel like that's been 15 years in the making.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting.
So, well, that's all I got for the headlines today. I mean, I think there is some nuggets in there on the hiring is going to come back. I think, they are trimming a lot of fat out there. It's going to be painful. The pendulum's going to swing back, but I got a busy weekend. We got an assembly Monday. The kids are going to practice some flags. I think I'm going to go sell some popcorn, raise some funds. What about you, man? Anything you got going on this weekend that you're looking forward to?
We have a bye week this week, so no basketball. So
Oh yeah, how
we
did
will.
the let's see, do we have to, or should we thank you or ChatGPT, or should we blame ChatGPT for
We
your
should
win
we should
loss?
blame. Now we're 0-2,
Yeah.
but I told the kids, I said, don't worry, because these first 2 games and teams, we actually play them for our last 2 games. So, we have basically we can measure our improvement to see where we are by the end of the season, because they will be the last 2 teams we play. The first 2 teams are the last 2 teams. So,
That sucks. So if you lose the last two teams, there's no improvement.
yeah, I don't,
You have to
but
reframe that.
I will, I'm teaching them math too. So it's like they're starting to get the concept, because, they were able to take lots of shots, but not make them. But they're taking, like, they like to joke that they're taking their Steph Curry shots. And I say, we don't take Steph Curry shots here, because we are nowhere in the range of even being high percentage shots. But if you took all those shots, we had the opportunity within our range, we would have higher percentage. And so we need to make sure we're coming
Nice.
into our range and that we
Bring it
are
back,
taking,
Dad. Go
bringing,
Coach
making,
Doom.
high percentage shots. So Our problem isn't that we're not able to get shots off. It's just we're taking shots that, you know, are converting.
Fair
So
enough. All right.
get right under the hoop. You only shoot from right under the hoop. And, we
Oh,
have a better chance of making that,
yeah.
make five out of 10 of those and we're money.
Nice. Yeah. We're into long division and, multiplying double digits on multiplication. And I'm like, honey, do you remember how to do long division? She's like, yeah. It's like, show me. So that was my last night. Like, yeah. So doing better than I am, man. Well, cool. I'm sure we'll have a ton of announcements and things to talk about next week. So appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see you around.